Oh, hello. You caught me. Here's welcome to David's editing world. Comfy shirt, little warm cover. We like to keep it cool in the house. Can't sleep when it's hot. And when I'm editing, nothing wrong with a little bit of vino. So anyway, promised you a video on from the workshop. Rhonda was nice enough to upload some images into the Dropbox folder, and I'm going to do a quick edit on a series of photos she took, a panorama, and try to run through that quickly. Nothing too in depth. One of the main things is understanding that however I edit it, understanding the tools I use, that's great, but my interpretation of her images might be completely different than something you would do or even she would do. So I want this to hopefully be helpful for you as you begin processing your images. Most of you are probably done a lot of it already, but maybe this will give you a little bit of information that you don't already have, and a couple of tips that are worthwhile and make it worth watching the video. I know, Delana, you said 9 to 10 minutes. I don't know if I can keep it that short, but I'll do my best to move pretty quickly through this. I'm going to make some assumptions along the way in terms of what you may already know, but let's move to Lightroom and get started with this. So, okay, let's take a look at her native size of her sensor, 7952 by 5304. Really referring to that so that when we get done, we look at the final image, go, have we gained ground? Do we have more pixels? Can we print a larger image at a really good resolution for commercial sales or just maybe your own personal enjoyment at home? So just one thing that I look at. So what I'm going to want to do is go through each image, take a zoomed in look. This is obviously nice and sharp. The leaf edge is good. You can see the stones leading out into the water. So we're all good there. So what I like to do is, if that image is good, I want to use it, I'll give it a 1. So I've set the rating to 1. Now, notice when I hit the 1, it set the rating to 1, but nothing else happened. Here's a quick tip. Put the cap locks on when you're in Lightroom. And now if you hit 1, it automatically moves you to the next image in the set so that you can kind of take a look and go at each one and move pretty quickly through them. And that's how if I import 500 images, one of the very first things I do is go through and I give it a 1 or 0, 1 or 0, 1 or 0. I'm either going to keep it or I'm going to get rid of it. So all right, so we're going to look at this one. This one's okay. It's a little further away, so it's not razor sharp, but not bad. So we'll give it a 1. Now we've moved to the next image, and this one obviously has some issues. Don't know what happened. Could have been any number of things, a little gust of wind or the tripod settling on the rocks, but something caused this to be a little blurry, so we're going to give it a 0. Here's the next one, nice and sharp, obviously, maybe even a little bit sharper than the other one. So we're going to keep that. Moving further up the line now. This looks okay. Yep, looks good. We'll give it a 1. Even further up the line, you can see the branches pretty clearly. This is sharp enough to work. And then now we're up in the clouds. So there's certainly going to be, and it's still loading, some lack of detail. But look at that branch right there, even the individual leaves. So we're nice and sharp there. So if I go look at this, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 images that look good and that I think we could use. This is the only one that we're not using. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click this, which says that the photo is in the target collection. I'm going to remove it. So now I'm only working with the images that I wanted to keep. All right, so we're going to select all, and we're going to get into the develop mode. And with them all selected here, and notice when you get in develop, you've only got one image. I'm zoomed in. Let's zoom out. First thing I'm going to want to do is go down to lens corrections and go ahead and remove the chromatic aberration and enable profile corrections. Other videos that I've put out there that are in our YouTube channel cover a little bit more information about those if you're interested. Now that I've got all of that done, I'm at a point to where I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to right click on any of the images. They're all selected. Go to Photo Merge, Panorama. Now, a thing to notice here, selected images appear to be HDR exposed brackets. Merge to HDR Panorama instead. So let's just briefly here talk about this. When we shot this panorama, we were exposing for the foreground, focused on the rocks, kind of metered for the foreground area and exposed for that. I knew there wouldn't be a tremendous change in exposure when we went up because the top part of the sky was cloudy and kind of shrouded. It wasn't like going from dark to brilliant sunshine. That's a whole other type of panorama. But for what we were doing, I did want to adjust the exposure a little bit as we went up. And we can go back and look at the images, but I think the first 3 or 4 might have been shot at half a second roughly, and then the top couple of images were shot at 1/3 of a second. Lightroom sees that and assumes that we're trying to do some time of bracketing. I know that we don't want to do that, so we're just going to simply say no on the screen, and that should take us past that, and it's going to start loading a panorama for us. And it's creating the preview. And while it's doing that, let's talk about spherical, cylindrical, and perspective. Usually, anytime that you are shooting a vertical, whereas I'd said we start horizontal, but we're going vertical with it, you're going to find that perspective is your best option. But let's take a look. Here's spherical. Notice how this is kind of arced over, and that's not what we want. Cylindrical, think of cylindrical as being like in a cylinder, and it works well when you're doing horizontal panoramas. And you set your camera on the tripod and you spin it around. You're just taking pictures of the inside of that cylinder. Nice and tall, but we still got an arc there. Still not really what I'm looking for. Let's try perspective. Perspective, whenever you're shooting vertical, in particular if you're near if you're shooting something that's tall in front of you, like a building or something, you're almost going to have to use vertical. So just be aware of that. Boundary warp is a good thing sometimes. I'm going to just pull that out, and you can see what happens is it takes and just stretches all the pixels out so it fills in the blank areas. If I take that away, we've got all of these areas here where there was no information based on overlapping the images. If we stretch that out, what you have to look out for, and it sometimes occurs, there's a little bit of it here where the water kind of goes up right here on this horizon. Over here, it looks like it dips down a little bit. You can get distortion at the edges. This is not so bad that I'm going to worry about it, so I'm going to leave that there. If you don't do that and you have these white areas, if you have auto crop on, it'll automatically crop the image. I don't want that. I want full control over what I'm going to be working with. Auto settings, if you turn that on, what Lightroom is going to do is automatically adjust exposure, texture, color tones, everything that we wanted to avoid by shooting in RAW. Lightroom takes over and does it. Now you have the ability to go in and edit those, but I prefer to have it just natural, the way it was shot, as a RAW file, and then I will apply the edits selectively as I want. Create a stack you're going to want to do. What that does, and you'll see it down here, you can see that we've got the all the images spread out along the film strip view, and this is when we create a stack, it's going to create the panorama and then stack underneath it all of the images that make up that panorama. So we've got the photo merge added to tasks, and it's going to go through and do its job. Okay, so here we go. This is what we're going to work with. Notice down here that the images all got stacked underneath the panorama, and this is what we're looking at. Looks pretty good in terms of the merge, came out pretty nice. This big white area, really, this triangle right here, really bothers me. And I could come in here. Oh, excuse me. Let me go back to this. Enable profile corrections. Notice that that is now unchecked. Even though we checked all the images and merged them, it's now unchecked. You can check it again. It'll stretch things out. I usually find that I don't need to do that. Sometimes it gives me really kind of odd results. So I'll leave that alone. Let's go to the basic panel. I could, because of this white, take the highlights down, but notice that it dulls the entire image, and I don't really want that. So what I'm going to do is use a graduated filter. Click on that. We'll take the highlights down here. I'm going to start up there and drag that down. Actually, what I'm going to want is probably that line of trees that's kind of from the shadow right there. So everything up here is getting 100% of the impact of this slider. And then from there to here, now we're at about 50% impact, and here we're at a 0% impact. And you can spread that out a lot or a little, just kind of depends on, what you're doing and what kind of impact you want to have. I'm going to go about like that. I don't want to get down into the color down here, so we're going to go with that. I'm going to call that good. And we'll turn that off. Okay. So sometimes I will do a lot of my edits, in particular global edits, without cropping or working on the composition of the image. In this case, I think I'm going to do a little bit of cropping to begin with. This bothers me because it's kind of off to the left. It's not really centered. And if this was reversed, it might be okay because the heaviness right here would be over at the third point. But since it's kind of running this way, it feels like I'm running out the side of the image, but there's nothing there. So I've got to get it a little more balanced. So I'm going to go ahead and crop this. And again, this is my interpretation. Somebody else could do something different. I want to click this lock and unlock it so I can make whatever edits I want. So I'm going to go about there. I'm kind of splitting things up. My choices right here, because of this little rock right here, my choices are to stay kind of in this range. I don't want to get so far over that it becomes part of, it's running off the side of the frame. So I'll probably come right about in here and say I'm done with that. Now when I look at it, I go, okay, top to bottom, how am I? And if we go back to rule of thirds, should this rule of third line be here, or because it's a reflection, should I bring this down and put that, here are these little center marks here, put them right around the water line. Okay, I could do that, but now I've cut off a bunch of this, really nice haze up here at the top. So, let's see, what do we do? If I bring that up, and then I bring this up here, do I like that? Do I like that better? Maybe this is okay down here. I'm not sure I like this bright white spots down here that are bothering me a little bit. The other thing is, if I zoom in, I'm going to have to tell it what I want to do with this. So I'm going to bring this back down, and we're going to check done. And if I zoom in, see these specks up here, and I know from experience what's about to happen. Let me zoom back out. One of the things that I'll be doing is dehazing a bit and a little bit of clarity, and look at how prominent these things are now. And this is most likely dust on the sensor. It could be specks of water or water spots on the lens. I tend to believe it's more likely to be the dust on the sensor, so need to clean the sensor. My camera, one of them I just sent, the one I was using actually on the workshop, I just sent to have it repaired. It had a small issue with it, nothing that prevented me from shooting, but also to get the sensor cleaned and the mirror box cleaned. And These things can be a pain. Part of the reason they're showing up, I mean, we're at F9, so I'm a little surprised we're seeing them there, and that also leads me to believe this could also be out on the lens. But usually you don't see the dust sensor spots until you're up above F11. Okay, so knowing that I've got those up there, and I could get rid of them, but it would be a lot of effort in Photoshop. Not a lot, but more than I want to spend on this time. I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and we're going to take that down, because I'm going to show you a way to add back that feeling that's up there. So we're going to go with that, which is pretty good. We've kind of got a balanced image with lighter colors or lighter tones up here, a little bit of lighter tones down here. We're now in the center. It looks to me like this isn't quite level, so I'm going to try to level this up a little bit. And by doing so, I need to bring this down just a hair. Again, trying to get pretty close to that center line. Okay. Now we're good, I think. This is what I'm going to work with at this point. So now, in particular, moving forward, this is really, truly a personal touch. You may like or dislike something I'm about to do. It's perfectly fine. Rhonda or whoever, make whatever edits that you think that you want. One of the things that I know I want to do is improve the feel of this area down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take another graduated filter. I'm going to get really close to that center line, and I'm going to just barely give myself a transition. Not much of one, because it's a horizontal line, and I'm really wanting to impact right up to it. And it's not about transition now. It's about this hard edge that takes place at the edge of a water line. And what I'm going to want to do here is take my dehaze up, and it really darkens that up. And look at, now you can kind of see down into the water with the stones and stuff like that. Play around with it a little bit. There's some more clarity that brings out even more of those stones out in the water. When you use clarity, you desaturate usually, so I'm going to bring back some of the saturation that's in there. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of sharpness, so these stones that are right in here are impacted. It won't do much in this area, but it definitely impacts these stones. And I'm going to call that good. And so now we've kind of accented this area down here. Now I want to fix the top a little bit. So one of the things I said was I was going to bring back some of this haze. And one of the ways to do that, so I've got a brush, selected a brush. I want to turn off the auto mask. I want feather up. I'll go ahead and do the flow up high. And I'm going to take dehaze down. So essentially I'm adding haze, right? And I want to come up here. I want a pretty big brush. And I'm not wanting to bring the haze all the way down, but I'm wanting to bring it a little further down. So maybe in this area here. And just with that brush, I'm able to bring those clouds and the way they looked a little further down into the image. And that's all I had to do. I think that looks pretty good. All right, now, though, I want to kind of make these colors pop a little bit. One of the things that I will do is take, and we're going to use effects. If you double click effect, it resets all of these. I might do a little bit of dehaze. I want to add a little bit of texture there. I want to boost the saturation a bit. And I'm going to paint all of these different areas right here where there's color. I don't want to get too high up, because then it eliminates the clouds. I will come in, though. I'm going to bring this down a little bit. And I can see this tree right here. Let's do a little bit up in here. I don't like that. Control Z. Actually, I do like what I was going to try to do, but that's too much. So I'm going to take the flow down, and we're going to try it again. I want to get a little bit more darkness and a sense of kind of presence in these trees that are up there. Okay, so I'm going to call that good. just the way it sits there. And, beyond this, I don't know that there's a whole lot more I would do that doesn't become a little bit more artistic and creative than I really want to. Might boost the vibrance a little bit, not looking to get overboard with the saturation, but that vibrance will help in these areas right here. This top part here is nice and white. I might at this point, if I take the highlights up a little bit, that kind of really increases that foggy look up there. Last thing I would do is probably add a little bit of a vignette to it, not too much. And that's what I would go with. If I hit the F key, here's the image. It's pretty. We got nice reflections in here. I could spend a lot more time on the reflections. One thing that I can do after looking at this, I want to take another brush effect. I'm going to add texture to these rocks. I want to try to make them pop a little more, make them seem a little more rugged. And so this texture helps. I'm going to just take my flow the rest of the way up. Let's see if we can make these look a little bit stronger, stand out a little bit more. And you can see that they do. And then the reverse side of this, I might take a new brush and reset texture. Let's take clarity down. And we're going to paint in this area right here. That was probably too much. We'll increase that a little bit. And a little bit of texture. Now we've got a little bit more of a reflection in there, and the stones have a little more texture to them. So, as I said, this is my version of it. You could do a lot of different things. You might decide, nope, I want the reflection line here. Crop it that way. And you may prefer that image. So the intention here was just to kind of show you my edits on a panorama, how I might approach it. And hopefully this was helpful. I plan on doing a couple others. In particular, I think it would be helpful if I did a night sky image, just because we shot night skies. It wasn't really a big part of the curriculum, but or the agenda for the workshop. But we did get some of those in, and some of the editing techniques for those is a little different, a little unique. So I think it would be helpful if I did one of those and kind of talk a little bit about what you'll see, what you can expect, and how to handle some of the things that you stumble upon as you're trying to edit those images. So anyway, hope everybody's warm tonight and safe. Anyway, so glad you guys joined us for the workshop, and hope we'll see you at another one. And cheers. Salute.